Would you take a seat, please? And if you have access to a Bible, would you open it, whether hard copy or on some device, to the Gospel according to John. John chapter 1, we're going to read from verse 43. We launch today a series in John's Gospel, and we're calling it Encounters. This is the season in the church calendar of Epiphany, and that means the manifestation of the glory of God. In the Orthodox tradition, it centers on the wise men coming, those who are not Jews, and bowing down to worship and give gifts at the infant Jesus, the manifestation of God in Jesus. John's Gospel in chapter 1. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Epiphany. The living God encountering us. And so we're taking John's Gospel and we're going to look in the next weeks about encounter with Jesus. How we move from acquaintance into life-transforming relationship. So, first encounter, Nathanael. John chapter 1, verse 43. The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, "Follow me." Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We've found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." "Nazareth? Can anything good come from there?" Nathanael asked. "Come and see," said Philip. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here is a true Israelite, in whom there is nothing false." "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus said, "You believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. You shall see greater things than that." He then added, "I tell you the truth. You will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. November 1983. Special month for me. That's the month when I came to declare, November the 11th, "Jesus, you are the Son of God." I was at law school, so I'd done a law degree, and now I was doing my professional exams. Law school, it was then in Lancaster Gate, the College of Law. And I'd been raised, my father is a pastor in the Church of England, or he was. And I had, as it were, had a lively childhood faith, but grew away from that faith. I was sent away to school, and at boarding school, somehow got disconnected from Jesus and into that old story of never a conscious rejection of God, and of Jesus, but a drifting away. It just became less and less relevant. I was far more concerned with achievement, self-realization, peer group approval. I went through university almost as a pagan. In fact, definitely as a pagan, at least in all outward forms. I'm now at law school, September 1983. At law school, they treat you like children, and you sit in the same seats for every lecture, in the same class. That's the way they took the register. And 3 seats in front of the one I sat in was this beautiful girl. And from behind, she looked absolutely stunning. 3 weeks into term, they organized a class party, a social, that kind of ice-breaking bonding with your classmates. And I noticed that this girl from 3 rows in front of me was at the party. So I decided that I would shark in, which was the terrible phrase we had in those days, that I would sidle up and win her affection, not least by impressing upon her what a fantastic guy I was. So up I sidle, engage her in conversation. Actually, she was very animated, and she was incredibly interesting as well as gorgeous. And somehow in the conversation, she asked, what does your father do? Which was a critical moment for me, because I thought, well, I can't tell her that I'm a Church of England vicar's son. So I said, my dad's a vicar. And it was about the first time in the conversation that not just animated, but her eyes actually lit up. And she said, are you a Christian? And I thought, what a weird question. So I gave her in that moment 34 reasons why it was intellectual, moral, philosophical, social suicide to be a Christian. I gave a pretty good speech. And at that point, she just looked at me and she said, I'm a Christian. And it was brilliant. She just turned on her heel and disappeared. And in my insufferable arrogance, the first thought I had was, you've blown it, lady. I know, Alison, I'm really sorry. You didn't want to know me then. But what was weird was the time when those first Ethiopian famines were hitting our screen. You remember Band-Aid and all of that? And there was something going on in me where I was kind of disturbed by that sort of, suffering, a kind of random injustice, a deep cry in some way of, that's not fair. I wasn't sophisticated or mature enough to articulate it like that. I just secured a job with the top law firm, I think it still is by reputation, in the City of London. And at one way, I'd kind of sailed through school and university. I'd never failed an exam. I'd never got less than an A grade. Everything just seemed to flow. But there was something in the aftermath of that conversation with that woman, a dissatisfaction. Do you know that dissatisfaction that you think, if I just have this, if I just get that, if I just pass this exam, if I just get that job, if I just had this amount of money, if I just got that woman. but you kind of get it. Or not. But there's still something. And something was going on in the aftermath of this conversation with this woman. And I felt an increasing sense of disturbance. And I felt an increasing sense of, what about Christianity? And in one of those really annoying ways, I had a kind of jar on my desk in my bedroom in the flat I was living in on Portobello Road. And there was a pencil there that I'd won as a Sunday school prize. And do you know what was embossed on the side of the pencil? Some words of Jesus. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And this began to disturb me. And I thought, who can I speak to? And I thought, I can't speak to my parents because that would make them think that I'm looking for Jesus. I can't do that. So I thought, I'd better go and speak to this woman. So I kind of swallowed my pride, did reflect on my motives, and that began a conversation where she gave her testimony about finding Jesus. And I still remember it to this day. November the 11th, 1983. We were walking around Hyde Park together. And I had this almost an open vision. And I saw this great weighing scales in the sky. And remember those early adverts for the lottery? And a big finger comes down. And it could be you. And this big finger came down and switched on the switch of that old style weighing scales. And it was as if God's voice said to me, in this pan of the weighing scale, are your 4 reasons that you're left with why it's suicide to become a Christian? And in this pan of the weighing scales is the abundant life I want to give you. And he said, watch. And he put the weighing scales on. And my 4 reasons and his abundant life. And it went like this. And something happened to me in that moment. And the girl who was walking beside me, the woman, she said, what's happening? I was still too proud to say, I think God's just got me. So I went home and I knelt down because I knew that's what you should do. And I gave my life to Christ. And I thought, because Alice and I were still shaped like this, that angelic trumpets would appear. Because I thought, God, you've got a really great prize. And nothing happened, but a voice came into my head. Ring your dad and tell him. I thought, you've got to be joking. So I rang my dad. And he was in an elders meeting at the church. And they were waiting for another elder to come. And so Dad answered the phone. And I said, Dad, I've just become a Christian. He said, say that again. I said, I've just become a Christian, Dad. And then I heard him cut the phone and say to the elders, Simon's just become a Christian. and then I heard this cheering in the background. So put the phone down. And then there was this just phone call after phone call from the family and the people of God saying, welcome home, welcome home. Now, thank you. Yeah. A transforming encounter that changed my life. The witness and testimony of a woman who said, "Come and see. Come and see." Now there's something going on in this encounter with Nathanael. I want you to see that the purpose that John writes is laid out for us in chapter 21 and the sort of final section, chapter 20, the final section of the book. Here he is. Jesus, writes John 20 verse 30, did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Now, in these encounters for John, and there's this series of encounters that begin in chapter 1, verse 19, and go through to the end of chapter 1, verse 51. There are three big questions. Who is Jesus? What are you looking for? And where are you staying? Where are you remaining? Where are you putting your trust for safety? Where do you rest? In these encounters, they are in the shape of testimony. And they give us ideal responses. Nathanael declared, "You are the Son of God." And he declares you are the Son of God after he sees or experiences a sign. The supernatural knowledge in Jesus of Nathanael, that just blows his mind. Now, we need just to get into this a bit more, so bear with me because this is pretty technical. Nathanael means gift of God, given by God. Something's going on when Jesus says, "Here is a true Israelite, in whom there is nothing false." At the end of this encounter, Jesus says, "I tell you the truth, you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." That is a story involving Jacob. Jacob means deceiver or false one. Jacob becomes Israel after an encounter with God. Do you remember the wrestling match with God? Jacob is renamed Israel. Israel means the one who has seen God. The one who has seen God. Now, what confuses scholars and commentators is that Nathanael doesn't appear in any other gospel and only appears once more, John 21 verse 3 in John's gospel. And in the story, the climactic answer in John chapter 1 as to who am I? Who is Jesus? The climactic answer is not given through any of the usual suspects. Simon Peter, do you remember him in Mark's gospel? You are the Messiah. Do you remember him in Matthew's gospel? You are the Messiah. The climactic statement is given through Nathanael. He's the one who really sees. You are the King of Israel. You are the Son of God. Scholars believe that Nathanael is a name, gift of God, given by God, in the same way that Peter is a name given by Jesus. Simon Peter. So if Nathanael's a nickname, prophetic nickname, who's Nathanael? The best argument, and you'll see why this makes sense, is that he is the disciple, James, son of Alphaeus. James is the Greek rendering of Jacob. Now, in the story, the climactic, I tell you the truth, you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Do you remember that was in a dream? And Jacob sees the Lord. And this descending on the Son of Man, it's angels coming down and going up, not on a place, but on a person, Jesus. The site of Jacob's dream was named Bethel. God in the house. God's house. And what Jesus is saying here, Nathanael, you've been blown away because I saw you. And I knew you because he knows what's in a man or woman's heart. You're blown away because I've prophesied over you. You are a true Israelite. You've seen God in this. You see, not Bethel where there was a shrine, not the tabernacle, not the temple. God's address now is Jesus of Nazareth. That's where he lives. And the Son of Man is a phrase that is Jesus' preferred way of identifying himself. It's taken from a prophetic, in the book of Daniel, a vision of one like the Son of Man who comes to receive authority and kingship from the one like the Ancient of Days, because he has destroyed the chaos monsters that come up from the sea. One like the Son of Man who must suffer. And you get this fusion of the king and the suffering servant. And in John, distinctively, the Son of Man is the place where heaven and earth meet. This is where heaven is present. This is where God is present. And you are going to see Nathanael. You're going to see water turned into wine. You're going to see cripples healed. You're going to see hungry fed. You're going to see the dead raised. You're going to see heaven and earth meeting supremely as I am lifted up on a cross. You're going to see heaven coming to earth. Okay. 3 responses this morning. Here's the first. Contemplation. Now this is about looking, seeing, beholding. This seeing word. John 1:14, the word became flesh, tabernacled, made his home amongst us, and we have seen his glory. So this seeing is not just a kind of distant perception. It's a kind of entering into, it's being impacted by the reality, which is God in our midst. How do we move from acquaintance with Jesus to life, transforming relationship? How do we refresh that? I was listening this morning to, it was a Maverick City song. Anyone know that one, Gyra? I mean, isn't that a wonderful song? And I just felt, I was shaving, had it on my phone. Gyra, God the provider. He's more than enough, and therefore I'm enough. I'm more loved now than I could ever be. Something interesting in this. Jesus is looking. Gift of God. Gift of God. Do you remember later in John's Gospel, Jesus says, the enemy is not going to snatch out of my hands those whom you have given me. Gift of God. And Jesus is looking for these disciples. You see, he's already seen Nathanael before Philip brings Nathanael to him. He's already seen him. And he knows, what are you looking for? Where are you staying? He knows that Nathanael, and there's just a hint, can anything good come out of Nazareth? There's just a hint that Nathanael had a certain self-regard and a cynicism, a pride, not unlike the young trainee lawyer. You've got to be joking. But Jesus has seen him. Don't know what the significance of the fig tree is. There's lots of suggestions. But Jesus has seen him. And when Nathanael's approaching, Jesus says, I've already seen you. Jesus prophesies over him. Because Jesus not only sees him and sees what is the longing in his heart. So Jesus is looking for him. Father God is looking for you. Meditate on that. See it. Father God sees you, but he sees more than that. What you will become in him. And he prophesies that over you. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. Peter, rock. Nathanael, gift, true Israelite. Jesus is always revealing the Father. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Nathaniel, true Israelite, you've seen God. Nathaniel, you're a gift of God. God's come looking for you and he's waiting for you. Now, there may be people in this room who know they've never moved from an acquaintance with Jesus to a life-transforming relationship. But there'll be people in this room who, like me, have been going a few years yet. And it's so easy in the synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It's so easy there when Jesus calls his first disciples. The pattern is respond to his call, leave everything behind, and follow. In John, the pattern is, and I think the Holy Spirit needs us to see this distinction. Jesus comes looking, reveals himself. And first, there's not a response to his voice, but an identification of who he is. And then a transformation. Contemplation. Do it in our singing. We do it in reading these scriptures. These have been written that we might believe that Jesus is the Son of God and we might have life, transforming life. Here's the second thing. Confession. Confession. Now, I don't want you to just wobble at the word confession. What I mean is what Paul meant when he wrote to the Romans. Do you remember? Romans chapter 10. If you believe in your heart and confess with your lips Jesus is Lord, there is something about the confession of Jesus is Lord, the declaration of Jesus is Lord. The freedom for Nathaniel begins when he declares, you are the Son of God. Now, the power of confession in that sense, it explodes the grip of the enemy. It encourages your heart. You enter again deeper, deeper, deeper into salvation. And it bears witness. What are you looking for? Where are you staying? There's a wonderful book by John Mark Comer, Live No Lies. And he commends the practice of confession, both declaring the truth, but also, isn't it wonderful that God knows us? I saw you under the fig tree. I know you, true Israelite. I know you. You're going to be a man of such integrity. Confession in the sense of, I want to be known. People in here who, like me from time to time, have just got stuck. And maybe we found ourselves looking for deep satisfaction in different places. Where are you trusting? Where are you resting? And so confession is not just that Jesus, you are true and real, but I don't want to live under these lies anymore. And I'm going to expose them so they lose their power. Last thing, sorry. I couldn't find a C word, but I'm just going to say testimony, witness. There's a pattern you'll read as you read through John 1:19 and following. Andrew brought Peter. Philip brought Nathanael to Jesus. The come and see. We had a barbecue with some friends from the church. And it's probably fair to say that the wife in this couple, well, it's definitely fair to say, is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Christian. But that her husband has found it harder to engage with God. This present Alpha course is the last Alpha course that Anna and I will do at St. Paul's. So I thought, do you know what we'll do? Is I'll write to all the people who I've known for 22 years or longer who haven't quite got it or connected with God. And I'll say, this is my last opportunity to try to persuade you that Jesus is Lord. So I wrote to this guy. We're having a barbecue a year ago. 2 years ago, sorry, it's not a Boris Johnson party. We were having a barbecue. And halfway through the barbecue, we were just standing around a big fire and sharing a beer. And he said to me, does it bother you that I've never got God? Does it bother you? And my first thought was, no, it doesn't bother me. I think I was really wanting to say, our friendship's not conditional on you following Jesus. But it then came into my mind, actually, it really does bother me. Because Jesus came that you might have life, abundant life. These are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Son of God and receive life. And so I said to him, it really bothers me, actually. And it bothers me because you are so missing out. You are so missing out. You are so missing out. We've got our Alpha course running. That's an immediate opportunity. But I want to ask, are you bothered when family, friends, colleagues are just missing out? And this is a season like no other, where what are you looking for? Where are you staying? Because all the places where people have been staying have just been shaken to bits. And people really are hungry. So who are you going to say, come and see? Come and see. Would you stand?